Dragon's Dogma 2 offers a plethora of different vocations to choose from, and the great news is that players will have the opportunity to try them all with their Arisen if they so choose. With that said, there are only 4 starting vocations, but the 6 other confirmed advanced and hybrid vocations can be unlocked by finding vocation masters and gaining their approval. Vocations are essentially classes, and alongside your Arisen and main pawn's level and attributes, you'll also be leveling up vocation ranks. Each rank increase will unlock new vocation features that you'll be able to purchase with discipline points, and these features include weapon skills, core skills, and augments. But keep in mind, you can only have a certain amount of skills and augments active at any given time. Weapon skills are the bread and butter of each vocation. These are your spells if you're playing as a mage or a sorcerer, your big devastating two-handed weapon attacks as a warrior, or your raining arrows as an archer, and so on. Do note that weapon types are tied to your vocation, with the exception of one, so don't play as an archer and expect to pull out a sword. Core skills are tied to weapon types, and these skills are your more basic fundamental vocation skills. Your light and heavy attacks, perhaps a swift step evasive maneuver if you're playing as a thief, or levitate if playing as a mage or a sorcerer, maybe a kick for the archer or a tackle as a warrior. Augments are passive boons, such as an increase to max HP or stamina, maybe an increase in climbing speed or quicker recovery times. The cool thing about augments is that they can be used with any vocation, so you do have incentive outside of just having fun to rank up several different vocations, therefore unlocking more augments. You may want the fighter's max HP increase augment for some of your more squishy classes. The 4 starting vocations that you'll choose for your Arisen and your main pawn in character creation are Fighter, Archer, Thief, and Mage. Warrior and Sorcerer are what we call advanced vocations, but do note that advanced does not mean better than starting. In Magick Archer, Mystic Spearhand, Warfarer, and also Trickster are what we call hybrid vocations. Let's go over them all, starting with the Fighter. The Fighter excels in melee combat, deftly wielding a sword and shield. But you can also use one-handed maces, and I think I even saw this sickle-like weapon. Fighters can slice through enemy ranks, delivering powerful blows, while also using their shields to protect themselves and their allies. This is of course your ultimate tank class, and while in some other games the sword and board style may come across as a bit boring when compared to classes that can, let's say, sling fireballs and call down meteor strikes, Capcom is really good at creating a solid feeling of impact. You're going to feel the intensity of this class of being on the front line. Expect to have a light and heavy attack, and the ability to block with your shield, or if you get the timing right, you can perform a shield parry. Some of the weapon skills will include shield summons, which is like a taunt. You should have a charge skill to close distance. Plenty of different powerful directional sword slashes. You'll be bashing opponents with your shield, breaking their guards, and even using your shield as a springboard to launch your pawns into the air to allow them to grab onto monsters, or allow them to perform special aerial maneuvers. Many of the augments that you unlock for the fighter will have to do with becoming more tanky, such as HP boost augments, or faster recovery and increased likelihood of being targeted by opponents. This is a great vocation to start the game as if you want to eventually become a warrior, or you may just consider staying as a fighter and your pawns will greatly appreciate you. The Archer vocation specializes in long-range attacks using a bow and arrow. They perform their attacks from afar and can target enemies in high positions. In addition, they are essential in supporting the front line. For example, by targeting enemy weaknesses, archers can create opportunities for your allies to strike. So in Dragon's Dogma 1, we had a vocation called the Strider, which allowed the use of a bow and also daggers. But in DD2, the Strider vocation has been separated into 2 vocations, the Archer and the Thief. I think the Archer is going to be super valuable in DD2, whether you play it yourself or you have an Archer pawn with you. It's really useful to have an Archer to shoot down flying opponents that your melee vocations just can't reach, and also shoot weak points that melee vocations may also have a hard time reaching. For your core skills, expect a quick shot for your light attack and a kick for your heavy. And depending on what core skills you have active, you'll also be able to perform skills such as steady shot, allowing you time to really aim, a leaping shot, a jump back shot, and a charged shot. For the mighty weapon skills, expect to see fire arrows, exploding shots, barrage shots, sweeping shots, rapid shots, and more. And actually, I think there's going to be this weapon skill that's called Heavenly Shot, which consumes all of your stamina in a single use, but it fires this crazy powerful arrow. The augments that you unlock as an archer will include augments that improve stamina, climbing may become quicker and easier, increase damage on enemy weak points, and so on. The Strider in DD1 was so much fun because of how agile it was and how much easier it was to scale opponents than, say, a fighter or a mage. I think this is also going to be a selling point for this vocation in DD2, and that also applies to the Thief. And speaking of the Thief vocation attacks with deadly speed, dealing rapid and consecutive strikes with daggers in both hands while exhibiting outstanding mobility. This vocation can quickly step away after striking, exploit openings to cling on to enemies, and inflict heavy damage. It may also steal items from NPCs and enemies, which tells us that some vocations have benefits outside of just combat. The daggers in DD1 with the Strider and Assassin vocations were fast as hell. It was a lot of fun. For your core skills, expect super quick light attacks, deadly double weapon strikes, a swift step to dodge, and this is basically an enhanced dodge, and if you really value that mobility, this is probably the vocation for you. Quicker recovery times when being knocked down, and also wall kicks to launch yourself greater distances. For weapon skills, you have access to skills such as ones that allow you to quickly dash past targets with your blades extended, and being able to chain that to multiple opponents. You'll be cloaking yourself to blend into your surroundings, igniting your daggers with fire, placing explosive barrels on the ground to detonate, ensnaring opponents to topple or pull them. There seems to be a smoke bomb, which will blind targets as a counterattack, and also more. The augments for the Thief will have some similarities to the Archer, with stamina reduction. There will be an augment to reduce the likelihood of opponents targeting you, so the opposite of that fighter augment that we talked about earlier. I think a strength augment has been confirmed, and yeah, like the Archer, climbing up and around big foes and also the environment is going to be much easier with this vocation over many of the other vocations. The Mage vocation wields a staff. And yes, they will have some powerful offensive spells, but the Mage also offers support to their party. If you want a healer, the Mage is actually the vocation for that party role, although the Magick Archer also does offer some heals. To cast more advanced and powerful magic with this vocation, your incantation time will increase. Capcom says that as a mage, you'll experience the strategic excitement of deftly executing your magic abilities. Mages were so good in DD1, and you'll see why when I talk about some of the skills. So a mage's core skills will likely be a light attack, which is this burst of ranged magic that can take on different elements or effects depending on your active enchantments. The heavy attack, which isn't really a heavy attack in this case, is actually the Anodyne spell, which is an AoE heal that will heal those that walk into its radius. Anodyne was a weapon skill in DD1, but it's now become a core skill. This makes mages even more valuable for a party, in my opinion, because you always have that heal now, as opposed to having to equip it as a weapon skill and sacrificing a different spell like you did in DD1. Other core skills include Levitate, which can be useful in combat to avoid enemy attacks and also reach certain parts of a creature's body, but also just to traverse the environment. And we also know of a quick spell core skill, which will greatly hasten incantation speed at the cost of stamina. So quick casting at the cost of stamina, but also some of your spell's power. Many of the mage's weapon skills include weapon enchantments such as Fire Boon, Lightning Boon, or Holy Boon, and more. These enchantments can be so useful in this game because many creatures are actually vulnerable or even resistant to certain types of damage, so being able to change that around can make a huge difference. Like I mentioned earlier though, also expect some offensive spells such as unleashing a jet of flames, calling down lightning bolts, and summoning sharp ice. For augments, expect magic defense boons, augments that can increase the effect of curatives, reduction in duration of debilitations, and so on. So those are the 4 starting vocations, but we still have to talk about our hybrid and advanced vocations, which can be unlocked by finding their respective masters and gaining those masters' approval. If you want to keep playing as one of the starting vocations, don't worry, that's completely viable. I do want to quickly note though that your pawns cannot be any of the hybrid vocations. They can only be the 4 starting vocations plus the warrior and the sorcerer. The advanced vocation of the warrior boasts a robust physique specializing in direct combat with the strength to endure enemy counterattacks. Warriors are masters of two-handed weapons such as the great sword and the hammer. The strike that is unleashed after charging power and identifying an opening is said to be among the most powerful attacks of all vocations. I can vouch for that line right there, as the warrior in DD1 had an attack called Arc of Might, which took like 10 seconds to charge up and your character moved super slow. But man, when that Arc of Might actually hit an opponent, it takes chunks out of a boss's HP bar, if not outright killing many of the opponents in the game. The warrior's core skills will include a light attack, which is like a sweep, a heavy attack that's a downward slash. There'll be a rush forward tackle, and skills that help you endure damage while charging attacks, and more. For weapon skills, expect the ability to slash skyward, which can be really useful when trying to attack a weak point on a boss that's standing over you or perhaps hitting a flying enemy. Expect massive AoE sweeps. Taunt ability, the ability to launch allies off your shoulders. A surging strike where you'll leap up and plunge down your weapon. There'll be counterattacks, and I'm also expecting this insane charge up strike like Arc of Might from DD2, but I guess we'll see. The augments for the warrior will be HP based. You may have the increased ability to break opponents' guards and also push and pull targets when grabbing hold. Knockdown power boosts, and there's even a confirmed augment that reduces accumulation of the loss gauge when receiving damage. And that augment, of course, would work great with any vocation. I'm personally super excited to try this vocation out. I think the impact feeling and just the feeling of being a badass is going to be really well executed from a gameplay standpoint from Capcom. The Sorcerer, which is an advanced vocation like the Warrior, is a vocation completely specialized in magic attacks. A sorcerer's magic is conjured with both hands through a large staff and can change the tide of battle at any given opportunity. It's important to note that a sorcerer's magic spells can take some time to cast, so it's important that players of this vocation learn to find the correct time and place to get off these devastating spells, and if you're not a patient player, this might not be the class for you. The Sorcerer, however, is the ultimate magic DPS, and the spells that we've seen so far are absolutely insane looking. For your core skills, expect a light attack that's similar to the Mage, where you just shoot a ranged burst of magic out of your staff. The heavy attack is actually said to be a core skill that's called Galvanize, which rapidly recovers stamina, and this works the quickest when standing still. I think the Sorcerer also has the quick spell core skill that the Mage had, where you increase your incantation speed at the cost of stamina, but overall I'd still expect to be spending some time casting spells, especially if you want the big boom. The Sorcerer should also have access to levitate like the Mage gets. For weapon skills, there should be some overlap with the Mage with jets of flame and lightning bolts, but while the Mage steers more down the support path, the Sorcerer gets magic such as conjuring giant ice pillars, conjuring a fire snake. Thundermind will conjure balls of lightning. There's a blizzard spell, a huge tornado spell, of course a devastating meteor strike, and also some more necrotic type spells such as one that saps opponent's HP and gives it to the Sorcerer. As far as I'm aware, those are the only ones that we've seen up to now, but there's probably more. For your augments, expect some of the same ones from the Mage class, but also ones such as Stasis, which reduces your rate at which items deteriorate in your inventory. A knockdown resistance augment, which will help you cast those spells, and an increase to damage when targeting hostiles' elemental weaknesses. I think this is going to be a really fun vocation to play, but also probably just a fun one to watch one of your pawns play as they cast these insane, powerful, elemental, huge-ass spells. And on to the hybrid vocation, starting with a fan favorite from DD1, the Magick Archer. Magick Archer excels in long-range combat with their magical arrows. In addition to attacking or healing, Magick Archers are also adept at supporting their allies. They can learn a custom skill that unleashes a devastating attack over a wide area in exchange for reducing their own maximum HP. So many people loved the Magick Archer in DD1, including myself, and it seems to only be more epic in DD2. For your core skills like the Archer, the Magick Archer will have a light attack, which is like shooting out quick bolts versus shooting physical arrows. And the heavy attack hotkey core skill is actually quite unique, and it's called Conversion. And what players seem to report that it does is that it switches your Archer into a multi-target type mode, or you could switch back to a single target mode. Other core skills include Pinpoint Volley and Rivet Shot, and there's also a few other core skills that affect Pinpoint and Rivet, such as Climactic Arrow, which makes Pinpoint and Rivet Arrow inflict more harm if you let loose those skills the instant that your bow is fully drawn, so some timing required. For weapon skills, we have Ice Arrows that can freeze opponents, a super powerful Flame Arrow that explodes on impact, and this skill is actually quite unique as you can control the arrow's trajectory after it's been loose, like you literally become the arrow. There's a Fire Orb that can be shot, Ricochet Arrows, Sedative Bolts, you can also shoot a Lightning Stake, and there's even an arrow that saps the health of its targets and gives that sapped HP to your pawns. So support focused, while the Sorcerer was more selfish and took the HP for themselves. And since I mentioned a heal, I can't leave out the Remedy Arrows, which not only heal allies that they strike, but it also revives fallen pawns when fully charged. We've not really seen too many augments for the Magick Archer, but two that we do know of consist of an augment that increases physical and magical defense for your pawns, so a support augment, and also one that recovers stamina when you deal a killing blow. On to one of the biggest surprises of DD2, but actually the next two are also quite big surprises, maybe even bigger. The Mystic Spearhand vocation. AKA the Jedi Knight. And this vocation is said to be effective from any range. The Mystic Spearhand combines melee and magic using the duo spear weapon for that martial might, and its magic is able to paralyze enemies or hurl multiple objects at them. Clearly inspired by Star Wars. This is a really cool looking hybrid vocation that was not in DD1, although it seems to be the replacement for the Mystic Knight. I think it's going to be quite the popular pick. So for your core skills, we have the light attack called Twain Cut, which swings the duo spear around all Jedi-like. And Magic Cut is the quote-unquote heavy attack, which shoots a disc of magic out of the spear as a ranged attack. There's also the core skill of Redoubted Bolt, which can be charged up, and what it does is fire off a bolt that flinches enemies. There's actually other core skills that you can get to add more effects and potency to this non-damage core skill, such as the ability for your Redoubted Bolt to slow opponents, restrain opponents, and even the ability for it to allow you to teleport to the target that's struck by your Redoubted Bolt. For weapon skills, expect a forceful jab that closes distance, the ability to conjure magical blades. You'll be able to levitate nearby objects and fire them off in the direction of your choosing. There's a stamina sap weapon skill, a magical defensive barrier, an air dart maneuver that ends in plunging down on an opponent at really high speeds, and you'll even be able to launch small targets great distances, removing them from the battle, but these opponents will grant no XP or loot. For augments, I think we've only seen two up to this point, and one that increases movement speed while carrying objects, and another that increases gold obtained from pouches. Super cool hybrid vocation. I think probably everyone will have to at least give a try to live out their Jedi dreams. The Trickster vocation is also quite the surprise, and this vocation is truly unique when compared to the others. The Trickster uses a weapon called the Censer, and it can conjure illusions through the smoke that the Censer creates. These illusions can be used to deceive enemies into fighting against their own, and they also have the ability to temporarily increase the power of pawns. If any of you like to be a pacifist, this is your best bet in this game, a game that's core revolves around killing big shit. There was nothing even close to the Trickster in DD1, and actually there's not really any class that I can think of in pretty much any open world RPG that's like this. For your core skill, we have your light attack, which swings the Censer around, creating smoke, which apparently does little to no damage according to IGN, but the core purpose of its use is to aggro enemies to then conduct other skills. The heavy attack hotkey or button does a core skill that's called Ephegeal Incense, which creates an illusory clone of yourself to which enemies will focus their attention on. And you have another core skill that allows you to teleport that illusory clone to your position, which basically allows you to kite opponents around. Other core skills will allow for upgrades to these core skills. Now, why might you want to aggro opponents and then cause them to attack a clone? Well, one, this will work really well with other pawns and other characters and other vocations, but this is also where the Trickster's weapon skills come into play. You can conjure an illusory horizontal platform over a cliff's edge and trick opponents into running onto this platform only for them to fall to their deaths. You can create an illusory wall that hinders opponents' movement and blocks their fields of vision, but doesn't actually affect your sight. You can summon an illusory dragon to knock down the opponents that you've grouped up. You can get opponents to turn on each other. And also, to make this vocation even cooler, you can even do an astral projection skill, which removes your spirit from your physical form, and you can control the spirit to scout ahead undetected, although I believe that stamina is consumed while you're holding this spirit form. For augments, we know of one that alerts you to the presence of Seeker's tokens and Wakestone shards, making them much easier to find, and there's some boons for combining materials and getting more yield and stuff like that. And last but not least, we have the Warfarer, which is supposed to be the jack of all trades vocation. Unfortunately, we don't have a ton of video or info really on this vocation, just a 15-second clip, but what we do know is pretty darn interesting to say the least. The Warfarer's icon shows an arrow, a sword, and a staff. And on the Dragon's Dogma Twitter, it was posted that the Warfarer can use all weapons and learn other vocation skills. It carries lower base stats, but can create boundary-crossing combos by switching weapons. So for those of you who are bummed out that the DD2 vocations at large basically railroad you into a single weapon type, well, the Warfarer is the one vocation where this certainly does not apply. Do note that Capcom also states that Skilled Arisen can bring out the Warfarer's best, so there's likely a bit of a skill cap here to truly play this vocation effectively. It's a bit more advanced in nature. How exactly this vocation works and how the skills from other vocations become available, we'll have to wait and see. Definitely a highly versatile class, and I think it's going to be quite popular endgame, as it seems like it's going to allow for some interesting builds. Let me know what vocation or vocations that you're planning on trying out as your Arisen character, and also choosing for your main pawn, but don't forget, the pawns are a little bit more limited in what vocations they're able to be. Thank you all so much for watching, and much more DD2 content to come over the next couple weeks, and probably next couple months, as this game seems like it's going to be a hit. And I'll catch you all on the next one.